Okay. I have to give permission, right? Good morning. I'm Vivi Deren, and Rifki asked me to teach the class today. I think she and Sippa and a bunch of other lucky shluchos were in Eretz Yisrael this week with the Chabad on campus trip, and much to my dismay, I said yes. I just have to say that I hope I can teach or learn the sikha properly. For myself, it was just such such a beautiful experience to learn the sikha this week. And people have said before on the chat, and this is not in the sikha, this is just a thought that when you start learning Rashi sikhas, at first the Rashi seems to make everything fits, everything is in perfect place. And then the Rebbe starts asking questions, and when you're a novice, and I am still a novice at this for sure, that it's like, wait, but why is there a question? Isn't it I see Shmuli Nachlis is asking, is there someone who can admin and allow people in during the class? Mashi says I can. Thank you, Mashi. And then the Rebbe starts raising questions, and so much more comes out, and so much more is we learn so much more than we would have, with just a superficial glance at the Rashi. And I'm going to suggest, if possible, Rifki often suggests it, and I see why. If you have a chumash nearby, it might be easier. It's Perek Gimel Pasuk Aleph. It's the Aliyah for Wednesday, Chelek Vivi. And in the previous Aliyahs, Moshe Rabbeinu has been taking the census of, all of the Yidden. But he was told that Levi does not get counted with everybody else. Levi is counted separately. And so he starts with counting Levi, and then the pasuk, this pasuk starts, the Eila told us Aaron and Moshe, and these are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe. B'yem dibra Hashem es Moshe b'Har Sinai, from the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai. So on those first words, Ve'ela told us Aaron and Moshe, so Rashi says, Ve'ene maskir ela b'nei Aaron. It only mentions the children of Aaron, the sons of Aaron. V'nikru told us Moshe, but they are called the generations, the descendants of Moshe. Lefi shelimdan Torah, because he taught them Torah. Melamed shekol hamelamed es ben chaverei Torah ma'aleh alav hakasuv ki'ilu yiladei. This teaches us that anyone who teaches the son of his fellow man Torah, the Torah considers it as if he gave birth to him, as if he fathered him. Then on the next Dibra Maschal, the next section of Rashi, B'yain Dibra Hashem es Moshe, on the day that the Eternal spoke to Moshe. So Rashi says, Nasu Elu Hatayladei Shalei. Then they became his descendants. Shelimdan Masher Lamad Mipi Hagvura. For he taught them what he had learned from the Almighty. So that's the Rashi. And we'll start with the Sikha. I'm not sure if is there anything I need in the chat? I think we're okay. Okay. Al pasuk ve'ela told us Aaron and Moshe b'yemdi b'Hashem es Moshe b'Har Sinai. On that pasuk that we just read, Pirish Rashi explains, ve'ela told us Aaron and Moshe. These are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe. Ve'ena maskir ela b'nei Aaron, but he only mentions the children, the descendants of Aaron. V'nikru Toldos Moshe, but they are referred to, they are called the generations, descendants of Moshe, Lefisha Limdan Torah, because he taught them Torah. Melamed shekal hamelamed is ben chaveri Torah ma'ala lav hakasav ki'ilu yilate. So that's what we learned in the Rashi. And then in brackets, but the commentaries already explained, Hatam lekach, shedavar zeh shaykh limid im bnei Aaron dafka, the reason why this is associated with learning with the sons of dafka, specifically with the sons of Aaron. Af shemesha limid Torah l'chol bnei Yisrael, even though Moshe Rabbeinu taught Torah to all of the Yidden. So why does it single out the sons of Aaron to say that they're like his children because he taught them Torah? Moshe Rabbeinu taught Torah to everybody. L'fi shemesha limdam benifrat, because Moshe Rabbeinu taught them separately. V'chein hiktim zeis limudeim kol bnei Yisrael. And he actually did that. He learned with Aaron's sons before he learned with all of the Yidden. Rashi has already told us the Seder that Moshe Rabbeinu would learn with the Yidden. First, he learned with Aaron. Then the sons of Aaron came in, so he learned with Aaron and his sons. Then the Zakanim came in, and he learned that third group, Aaron, his sons, and the Zakanim. And then, with all three groups there, then he learned with all of Bnei Yisrael. And since, because in this detail, Moshe was not obligated, he was not obligated to teach Aaron's sons separately. Even more so, Mishalimed Kvar Kedem Lechein es Aaron, since he had already taught Aaron, Shuv Nase Kvar Aaron Atzmei Mechib. So Aaron is now obligated to teach because he's their father, and he is obligated to teach them. Ulamed es Banav, he's obligated to teach his children. Mechiv Ulamed es Banav. Al Kain Kibel Moshe Schar Miyuchad. So Moshe received an extra, a unique, a special reward. Asher Ma'ale Olav Hakasav Ki'ilu Yilade. That the pasuk the Torah considers it as if he had fathered them, so that they're his children. And then Rashi continues in his parish, B'yem Dibra Hashem es Moshe. On those words that Rashi says, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe, Ma'amid Har Sinai, Nasa Elu HaTilada Shalosh Limdan Ma Shalamat Mipi Hagvura. So that is when they became his descendants, his Telades, because he taught them what he learned from Hashem. What additional information is Rashi giving us here with giving this explanation, Shebedibra Hamaschel Hasheni, in the second section of Rashi, that they became his children when he taught them what he learned from the Eibishter. This idea we have already been taught in the Dibra Hamaschel, in the first section that we had before. Shalim dan Torah, that he taught them Torah, Ma'ala of Akasav Ki'ilu Yilade. So what does Rashi add in the second section? He already told us this, because he taught them, that's why they're considered his children. Ubir Mefarshim, so the commentaries explain about this, Shehuk Shel Rashi Hamshach HaKasav, that Rashi's question here is about the continuation, the end of this pasuk. Eich masimus hatevas b'yem diba Hashem es Moshe. How does it fit in these words on the day when Hashem spoke to Moshe? Levei kehemshech l'ne'amar ve'elu toldos Aaron v'gemer. How does that fit in over here to what was said in the beginning, that these are the descendants of Aaron and so on? Umefarish Rashi. So Rashi explains Shahatir b'yem dibra Hashem v'gemer, that the description of on the day when Hashem spoke and so on. Lei nimshach achar haloshin ve'elu toldes Aaron v'gemer elahu ba behemshach l'nemar ve'elu toldes Moshe. So that it's not really speaking about that these are the descendants of Aaron, but it's coming as a continuation of what was said, that these are the descendants of Moshe. So he's continuing to explain that. Kivan shebnei Aaron nikru gam toldes Moshe. Since the children of Aaron are called also the descendants of Moshe, al shalim dan Torah, because he taught them Torah, kedivrei Rashi b'dibra hamaschal hakedim. As Rashi explained in the first part, Mavir hakasav la'alter she'inyan zeh nishchadish v'nifel mikeach b'yem dibra Hashem es Moshe. So right, it's like the pasuk is explaining right at the outset. This whole thing, when did they become his descendants, Moshe's descendants? B'yem dibra Hashem es Moshe, when Hashem spoke to Moshe, Shabel limdan masha lamad mipi hagvura. On that day, he taught them what he had learned from Hashem. Umasha amar hakasav b'yem dibra Hashem es Moshe, and the fact that the pasuk says on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe, the l'chera halei Moshe limed this b'nei Aaron Torah gam b'chol hameshech hazman shel achar yem dibra Hashem es Moshe. So, what do you mean on that day? Moshe Rabbeinu taught them Torah the whole time after the day that Hashem spoke to him. So, what is it telling us that why is it tracing it to Matan Torah? Because he taught them a whole long time after that. Even more so, the main teaching of Torah to the Yidden, Bichlal, in general, Aaron and to Aaron's sons in a unique, special way. That actually started for real, that whole system, the day after Yom Kippur, after the third set of 40 days, that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai. Yeser me'arba chadasha meyaz hayem asher dibra Hashem es Moshe b'Har Sinai. More than 4 months after the day when Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai. Tirtza Mefarshim b'shnei afanim. So the Mefarshim answered this in 2 ways. Aleph, b'yem dibra ha'amar kan mashmusei miyem dibra. So they say, well, when it says on the day, in the day that it's spoken about here, what it means to say is mi yom dibra, from the day when Hashem spoke to Moshe. There's a pasuk about a carbon that says that's what's left over in the bread and the meat. It doesn't mean what's in the bread and the meat, but it's min habasar v'halechem, from the bread and the meat. In other words, that in is really teaching us not in that day, but from that day. Bays, the second thing, b'diak haloshin b'yem bikesh hakasav lamdenu she'afilu lo limdei rak davar echad nasu elav teilades. By stressing that one particular day, it's the pasuk is teaching us that even had they just learned one thing, that one day that they once learned one day from Moshe Rabbeinu, already then they become his descendants. However, in addition to the squeezing in, the tightness of how these answers fit in, it's hard to say that this is what Rashi intended. Shehare. So now the Rebbe is raising questions on this whole idea over here, and obviously on some of the explanations that have been given up until now. Aleph. Hadgashas hahaschala masay nasu b'nei Aaron till days of Shalmesha al yedei zeh shalimdim Torah l'may nafka mina. This emphasis on when did they become his Teilodes, his descendants, or descendants of Moshe, because he taught them Torah. What difference does it make? Why does the date, when exactly they became his Teilodes, why is it telling us this? Phase v'ikar. And the main thing is Moshe limited b'nei Yisrael Torah af b'Torah matan Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu taught Yidden Torah even before Matan Torah. Lifnei Yom Dibar Hashem es Moshe b'Har Sinai. So it's not like Moshe, as teacher of Torah, did not begin at Har Sinai. He taught them Torah before. Kamesha Pirish Rashi, as Rashi himself says, Shebemara nasan lahem mixas parshas shel Torah sheyisasku bahem. That already in Mara, which was after they came out of Mitzrayim, not long before Har Sinai, but in Mara already, Moshe Rabbeinu gave them some parshas of the Torah that they should be involved in. For example, Shabbos. The Yesel came, even more than that. Eid b'hiyesim b'Mitzrayim, even when they were still in Egypt. Tziva HaKadosh Baruch Hu kama v'kama dinim. The Eibishter already commanded several dinim, several laws, Kim Super Parshas Bay, as it is described and told to us in Parshas Bay. She'eisam Chazar Moshe v'limed l'bnei Yisrael, that Moshe reviewed them and taught them to the Yidden. The Imkain mipnei ma nasu bnei Aaron toldesev shel Moshe rak b'yem diber Hashem es Moshe behar Sinai v'lekeitem l'chein. So why are we dating the Moshe becoming them? They becoming descendants of Moshe. Why are we dating this to Har Sinai and not before that? It's a squeeze. It's tight to say that the special way that Moshe taught Bnei Aaron that because of that way that he taught them, that they became his descendants, that special thing, that special connection was formed dafka in that pattern that we described, that began the day after Yom Kippur. Okay, so it's hard to say that it's, this way of teaching them, where we hear Taka about it, that actually started the day after Yom Kippur, but it's hard to say that was that Moshe's way of teaching them, that began then. Ki hatam eze sheyihi l'seder mishnah ze b'chlal b'frat l'limud ze hanifredim b'nei Aaron. The reason, for whatever reason it would be, for teaching this way, especially separately with Bnei Aaron, this actually was applicable, and it happened. It was in place, full force, even before the day after Yom Kippur. As it's evident from here itself, that even on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe B'Har Sinai, already then, so even from the pasuk we see that it didn't start the day after Yom Kippur. We have a specific reference here to Shekfar B'Yem Diber Hashem as Moshe B'Har Sinai, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe on Har Sinai, B'Shishi or Shvi B'Sivan, whether it was the 6th or 7th of Sivan. Lamad Moshe benifrad im b'nei Aaron. Moshe learned it separately with b'nei Aaron. And it seems to arise from here that this is where we get the idea that at that time they became his Teilodes, they became his descendants. And so it makes perfect sense to say, even before Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu was already teaching them in the way that he taught them later. But there's this, why is it that it's being dated to start? It's connected to the day of Matan Torah. What is it about that It lends a special understanding here. The Eid yesh l'dayek kama diyukim v'loshen Rashi umehem, and then we have to be very specific about some of the specific things that Rashi expresses himself umehem and among them. Aleph. Miloshen Rashi, b'divrei hamaschil harishon. From what Rashi says in the first quote of the pasuk, ma'aleh alav hakasav ki'ilu yiladei, in that the Torah considers it as if he fathered them. Move on she'ein pirush hadvarim she'hein na'asu toldesav. So look carefully, and the Rebbe is going to analyze the two ways in which their relationship, this relationship of Moshe to Bnei Aaron, described very differently. In the first part of it, it says, Ma'alel of hakasav ki'ilu yiladei. The pasuk considers as if he had fathered them. Muvan she'ein pirush hadvarim she'hein na'asu toldesav. So it's understood from that the explanation of this is not that they became, not it was they became his actual descendants. Rather, it's describing for us the element of schar, the element of reward. We should understand that this fact that he was teaching Bnei Aaron was valued so much. It's considered as if he fathered them. Because of Rashi. But look in the second part that Rashi speaks about. What does Rashi say? Because of Rashi, they became. Nas was a much stronger expression. They actually became his descendants. That they changed to become the actual descendants of Moshe. So in the first part where it says ki'ilu, it's like it's nice. It's almost more of a figure of speech. The second part of Rashi is very strong. No, na'asu, they became. V'atmiya Rabbi Yeser, and there's even more to wonder about. Makar Pirusha Rashi hu b'Gemara. Rashi bases this, the source for what Rashi is explaining here is in the Gemara. V'sham nusach hadvarim hu, and there the way it's described, the words, the actual words that the Gemara uses to describe this relationship is kol hamalamid l'chulei. Whoever teaches, the son of his friend is Torah. Ma'alel hakasav ki'ilu yiladei. The pasuk counts it as if he fathered him, fathered them. Shenemar ve'eva teldes Aaron and Moshe. That these are the generations of Aaron and Moshe. And look what the Gemara says further. Moshe limed, Moshe taught them. Lefichach nikreu al shmei. Therefore, they were called on his name. They were called on his name. Rashi hesiv kan aloshan hashas. Rashi is like adding in on the lashon of the Gemara, the expression of the Gemara, because of leirak nikru. And Rashi writes, not only were they called Toldes Moshe, ela na'asu ela hatchiladishli. They became his children. Base. Ma pesha arichas halashon shalimdan. And what is the explanation? This is the Rebbe's question here. It's like a lengthy expression and how Moshe Rabbeinu taught them. What did he teach them? Ma shelamad mipi hagvura. What he learned from, and this is a term that's used to describe the Eibush there, and obviously it's very strong. Mipi hagvura. When you refer to the Eibush there as hagvura, the mighty one, the Almighty. Rashi could have said this in a much more concise way. In fact, just in the same expression that he quotes in the first section of Rashi, Shalim dan Torah, he taught them Torah. Why this long expression? Ma lamad mipi hagvura. Why doesn't it just say he taught them Torah? What are we meant to understand? What are we meant to learn from this like bulkier expression? Afilim tinsilemer should because of Nemer Halashon B'yem Dibra Hashem Esmesha. Even if you're going to say that since in the pasuk it says the expression on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe, Al Kain Gam Rashi Madgish Behesem Lizeh. So, okay, Rashi is also emphasizing this. Shelimda Nas Asher Amelei Hakadosh Baruch Hu, that he taught them what the Eibishter said to him. Adayin Ein Mechaber. It's still not clear. It's still not clear. Ki im mishum kach, because if that would be the case, mipnei ma shina Rashi meloshen v'teichen hakasav, then if he's just basically repeating it, why did Rashi change the expression and the content of the pasuk v'nakat? And he quoted Masha Lamad. Rashi says that he learned v'lei Masha Shama, not what he heard. Beis mipi hagvura. Why does it say mipi hagvura and not mipi Hashem v'kayetzi b'zeh? So there's obviously something more going on here. V'habir b'zeh. And the explanation in all of this, Gimel, we're up to Ois Gimel, the third section. Rashi ena yachol histapik b'pirish kol hamalamed dispen kaverit tera ma'ala because of kilu yiladi shekem because of nemar the Ela telis Aaron umesha. Rashi is not. It's not enough for Rashi. He can't be satisfied by saying whoever teaches his son, the son of his friend, another Torah, that Torah considers it as if he is his father, because in the pasuk it says ve'elu telis Aaron umesha, because the pasuk says these are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe. So what's the problem? Ilu nemar because of Teldes Moshe. If it would have said these are the descendants of Moshe, bilvad, just Moshe. It could say that it didn't say this. Shakasav naked, but between Teldes bitor shem hamushal, that the pasuk is using the word Teldes. If it would just say Toldes Moshe, B'tar Shem HaMushal, it's like a borrowed term. It's not a precise, exact description. Because through this, that he taught them Torah, that because he taught them Torah, so the Torah considers it as if he would have fathered them. Like Rashi says on the pasuk that we learned back about Avram Avinu and Lech Lecha, Hanefesh Asher Osu B'Charan, the souls that they had made in Charan. And what does Rashi say there about, Avram and Sarah? Shehechnisan tachas kanfei hashchina, that they brought them under the wings of the Shechina v'chulei, and so on. Umala aleihem hakasav, so the Torah considers it ki'ilu asa'om, as if Avram and Sarah were actually their parents, had made them. But it doesn't, it's a Shem HaMushal, it's a borrowed term. It doesn't mean they were already in existence. They were people, they weren't made in that sense by Avram and Sarah, but ki'ilu, it's as if they would have made them, because they brought them under the wings of the Shekhinah. Valderech zeh pirush Rashi es lashon hakasav lahalan, and this is in the similar way that Rashi will explain or speak about the expression that the Torah uses further down, that we'll have in Dvarim, Ha'amura b'kesher l'limud ha'Torah, that says, spoken about in connection with learning Torah, kib'pasuk didan, as in our pasuk over here, Vishinantam levanecha, you should teach them diligently to your children. And what does Rashi say? Elu hatalmidim. When we see the word children, it means your talmidim. It means the students. Masinu b'chol makim shatalmidim kruim banim. We find in all places that talmidim are called children. Okay, so achkan halei nemar ve'elu teldes Aaron and Moshe. But here, if it would just have said Ela teldes Moshe, then we could explain it like with Avram and Sarah, or like Vishinantam Levanecha. It's a borrowed term. It is not a precise description of actuality. It's a borrowed term, as it is in those cases. And so there are elements, there are things that are relatable and that match, but it's not mamish the same thing. If it would have said Teldes Moshe, so that would fit into the same other two categories, like Avram and Sarah or Vishinat and Levanecha. But Achkan Halenem Ve'el Teldes Aaron Umesha. But here it doesn't say that. Here it says these are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe. So the pasuk mentions them like it's like one thing. It's one continuous, one single category. These Hainam Toldes Moshe B'dei Mamish Liyesem Toldes Aaron. These are the generations of Moshe, similar exactly to how they are the descendants of Aaron. If it would have just said Aaron, Toldes Moshe, okay, so it's like Avram and Sarah, or Shinantam Levanecha, but it doesn't say that. It says Aaron and Moshe. So it's telling us the pasuk by linking them together this way. These are the descendants of Aaron and Moshe. It means that they're similar in how they are. How this is so that Moshe is like their father, like Aaron is their father. This causes us to wonder. How can we compare there being the generations of Aaron? Their whole existence is that they are descendants of Aaron. How can we compare that that they are considered the generations, the descendants of Moshe, because he taught them Torah. With all of the elevation, all of the how great this is. It still doesn't seem, it wouldn't seem to be saying, at least at first glance, that they were somehow, there was a whole new element in their actual being. And it would seem that the fact that he taught them Torah would only give us place to say that it's considered ki'ilu yilade. That's as far as you can go. But by the fact that it has Teldes Aaron and Moshe, it's like, no, this is something else. This is not ki'ilu. This is something else. Okay, naked Rashi b'Perish Advarim. And that's why Rashi has to quote in explaining all of this, that the pasuk, the Torah, it like makes it all clear by adding the words b'yem diber Hashem es Moshe, on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe. Lashon zu madgisha shehater she'isa limed Moshe es bnei Aaron ha'isa masher lamad mipi hagvura. Those words are like singled out. This expression emphasizes that the Torah that Moshe taught bnei Aaron was what Masha lamad mipi hagvura, what he learned mipi hagvura from Hashem. But again, this is a very unusual expression, and it could have just said he learned Torah, but it doesn't. It says that he learned mipi hagvura, from the mouth of the Almighty. This kind of learning brought in something altogether new. Upal gvura, it brought about a strength. Shenasu elu hatavadishalei, that they became naasu, even more than what the Gemara says, not nikru, but naasu. They became his children. Hainu shahaya kan limud kazeh sheshina es etzem mitziusam beruchnius ad shemikeiche na'asu l'toldes Moshe kidulikaman. That this, what we have over here is a kind of learning that changed the actual essence of their being spiritually, and because of this, that the fundamental transformation that was brought about because he taught them what he learned, mipi hagvura, and this expression is very specific, that because of that na'asu, they became toldes Moshe kidulikaman, as will be explained further on. We're up to Dalet. As an introduction to Matan Torah, the Eibishter told Moshe that he should give over this message to the Jewish people. Vata, and now, im shemaya tishmu b'keli, if you will listen to my voice, ushmartem es brisi, and you will keep my covenant, v'hiyisem li skula mikol ha'amim, and you will be for me a treasure from among all the nations, v'geimer, v'atem tihiyu li mamlechas kayanim v'gei kadosh. You will be for me a kingdom of Kayanim and a holy nation. So something very fundamental is the Eibishter says to Moshe before Matan Torah, we're making a deal over here. If the Yidden are going to do what I'm asking of you to do, then it's a fundamental change in who you are. It's transformational to all of the Yidden, and you will be a kingdom of Kayanim and a holy nation if you keep this covenant, if you keep this deal. So we are led to say, to conclude, that through the giving of the Torah and the receiving of the Torah, then we have something altogether new, a fundamental change in the actual existence of the Yidden. Before Matan Torah, Yidden are like everybody else. But with the kayach of Matan Torah, Nasu b'nei Yisrael shenim, then the Yidden became different, muvdalim, separate, umiyuchadim, and unique, sgula mikol ha'amim, a treasure from among all of the nations, chosen from among all of the nations, b'hiyesam b'bchinas, because they are now in the category of mamlechas kayanim, a kingdom of kayanim, the Gai Kadosh, and a holy nation. Umitam zeh haya Matan Torah be'efen sha'akadosh baruch hu his gala libnei Yisrael ubederech gevura. Because of this fundamental change that happens to the Yidden at Matan Torah, the Eibishter revealed himself to the Yidden ubederech gevura, in a whole manner of gevura, power. The Eibishter showed his power and his strength to the Yidden. Kailes, the sounds, the voices, the lapidim and the flame, kail hashefer, the sound of the shefer, and etc. All of that was a show of strength by the Eibishter. Shedavar zeh pol shine b'mitziyusam shel bnei Yisrael. This show of strength, the Eibishter revealing his power, brought about a change in the fundamental existence of the Yidden. V'hesashmias hadibris mipi hagvura. The Aseres Hadibris we heard, the first two we heard from the Eibishter himself, and again that expression referring to the Eibishter as not Hashem Elokim, whatever, it's mipi hagvura, from the powerful one. It's Hashem as he manifests in power. The kivan sheshin zev ha'isam liskulav again, karach b'matan Torah v'toli b'kim ishmartem esbrisi. And since this change, that you will be a chosen nation for me, this is connected to Matan Torah, and it depends on fulfilling ushmartem esbrisi, shmiras haTorah. You will keep my covenant keep the Torah, move on. Shekayach yichudi zeh shel matan Torah hayicholos lif'ol es shinei hametzias nitan pnima b'seich haTorah. So this unique kayach of matan Torah, the ability to bring about a change in the actual existence, nitan pnima. This is given inside the Torah, the B'tzeich HaTorah, in Torah itself. This power of Mipi HaGvura and so on, this is something that is now found in Torah. I added the word now, it doesn't say that. Sorry. V'zehu gam mashadiak Rashi because of shalimdan mashalamad mipi hagvura. And that's why Rashi is very specific and writes that Moshe taught Bnei Aaron what he learned mipi hagvura. Hayesha hater shalimdan as Bnei Aaron be'efen miyuchad. The Torah that he taught Bnei Aaron in a special manner. Haysa mashalamad mipi hagvura was what he learned from the Almighty. Shemesha Shama v'lamad zeis ba'atzmei mipi hakadosh baruch hu. Moshe Rabbeinu heard this and learned this himself from the Eibishter, from the mouth of the Eibishter. He hechila b'goli es kayach hagvura shel matan Torah. So the way that he taught them, it contained in a revealed way this kayach hagvura, this power, the kayach of the strength, of the power of Matan Torah. Shebekeiche l'shanei says mitziyusei shel ish Yisrael. Matan Torah has the ability to change the existence of a yid. V'alkein na'asa elu hateladei shalei. They became his children. Because the way that Moshe Rabbeinu taught Aaron's children, it accomplished, it brought about a helada, a birth spiritually. Api hanal shehanemar be'elu todes u'Moshe misparish leirak ki'inyan shel ki'ilu yilad. According to all of this, that when it says the Ela told us Moshe, it's explained that it's not just something that as if he gave birth, as if he fathered them, Ella, Jezehu b'deima l'toldes Aaron. But it's so powerful that it can be put on the same level. It can be compared to Toldes Aaron. Just like Aaron is actually their father, the Gashmias, that Moshe being their spiritual father puts it on in a way on B'dema, it's similar to Aaron being their physical father. That they became his children. Yuvan gam diyukei shel hakasav kan be'amrei b'yayim di b'Hashemes Moshe v'lei miyayim v'geimer. And this is especially, we now understand why the pasuk is very specific about using the word b'yayim in the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe, and not from the day, as we had said before. Okay, obviously it doesn't say this in the Sikh. I just thought that this particular paragraph we can relate to as women in a special way. Kishem shebehilada gashmis bevadai lo yitachin lemer shahilada hi davar hacheze u'misrachesh pa'amim rabbis. Just like with a physical birth, we absolutely it does not make any sense to say that the birth is something that repeats itself and happens many, many times on this with the same child. The birth happens with that at the first moment, at the moment of birth. And after that, it's just a question of the shahavlad, that the one that is born, that the baby grows from being small to becoming bigger, but It's not in a continual state of birth. Okay. The same thing with the spiritual birth. They became his descendants. This came about on that day of Matan Torah. The Belimud Harishain Shalabad Mesha Benifrad in Bnei Aaron Esatera. The first time that Mesha learned separately what the Torah that he learned from the Eibishter, from Mipi HaGvura. V'ilu limit haTorah shemikana lahaba shel Mesha im bnei Aaron hayet shalei be'efin she'al yidei zeh na'asu ela ha'telada shelo. After that, when he learned with them, it wasn't that learning was what made them his telades. They became his descendants from that day of Matan Torah. And after that, his learning with them, so after that, it became like anybody who's learning with everyone who teaches his the child of another Torah, it's as if he gave birth to them, as will be explained further. So there is this fundamental transformation that's directly connected to Moshe Rabbeinu learning directly from the Eibishter Maimon Har Sinai, and then the continual relationship is in the category like Rashi speaks about in the first part of Ki'ilu Yilad. We have now a whole other question. Now we can't understand something. What happened here? By Matan Torah, all of the Yidden, including Bnei Aaron, Aaron's children, they all heard Mipei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Atzmei, from the Eibishter himself, Mipei HaGvura, from the powerful one, as Aseres HaDibros, the Ten Commandments, Kafisha Nemer B'Dibur Echad, as they were, the Eibishter said them all like as one thing, U'achrei Zeh, and after that, as Shnei HaDibros Anechi V'Lo Alecha, then the first two of the 10, they heard directly from the Eibishter. Ve'im came nif'ala mikvar b'chol b'nei Yisrael, u'b'nei Aaron b'chol ha'lada ha'ruchnis b'eis shmias hadibus min bi'agvur. So then all of the Yidden had this experience of being transformed and having this spiritual rebirth. Everybody had that, including the sons of Aaron, because they all heard from the Eibishter. B'eis shmias hadibus min bi'agvur, because they heard it from the Almighty. And so now, so how are we saying now? How is it possible to say that Bnei Aaron, they became Moshe's Teilodes, his descendants, through the fact that Moshe came back and he told them afterwards, separately, what he heard Mipi Agvura from the all-powerful one. Everybody heard it. So why are they being singled out? And what they heard from Moshe? We just said that everybody heard it from the Eibishter himself. Because of Shalimda Mashalamat. So Rashi is very specific. It's not just saying what they heard, but with Moshe and Bnei Aaron, it's he taught them what he learned from the Eibishter. In order to accomplish this rebirth, this spiritual birth, through the Torah, it's not enough to just have like regular listening. It's not just that they heard, you didn't heard the dibros from the Eibishter himself. That's not enough. That's not enough to cause that that kind of transformation. They were transformed, but hearing alone is not the full thing. The full experience, as we just heard, is Moshe teaching them. But it must be, the Torah has to be learned. It has to be absorbed by the one who's listening. It's, in other words, just hearing it alone doesn't carry it. So here, this is a whole new thing that Moshe accomplished with Bnei Aaron, because he taught them what he learned from the Eibishter. It's not just that Moshe spoke the remaining 8 commandments, 8 dibris that to the Yidden. He taught them all of the Aseres Hadibres, im hilchosehim u'pratei dinehem, with all of their halachas and all of their details of all of the laws. And since he learned separately with Bnei Aaron, because of that, they became his teiladis. Vav. So, okay, so with this explanation, it would seem that we could have some questions. Ilu nemar shebrisho kach shemesha lematerim b'nei Aaron as emala lov hakasuv ki ilu yiladei. If it would say that because Moshe learned Torah with b'nei Aaron, then the pasuk considers it as if he bothered them rak b'tor schar. This is just it's like a reward. You went out of your way for them and gave them separately, so you get something special, and it's considered as if you're their father. Okay, so we could see that because he singled them out and he learned with them, so they're called Teles Mesha, even though he learned Torah with everybody, but they had an extra element. Shekain Kimuva, as we had before, Halima Bnei Aaron Dafka, Haya Inyan Shalifnim Mishuras Hadin, Shalav Ruya Kabbalah Schar Miyuchad. That it was actually in one of the footnotes that the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu learned with Bnei Aaron was something, it was Lifnim Mishuras Hadin. In other words, he had to teach everybody. But because you could make the case that first he taught Aaron, and then Aaron now had the obligation to teach his children. So for Moshe, since Aaron is there and he has the obligation to teach them, Moshe is not required to do this. Or in the case of teaching Goyim, Moshe had to teach everybody. The fact that Moshe Rabbeinu went out of his way to teach Bnei Aaron is Lifnei Mishuras Hadin. He did more than what was required, and that deserves a special reward. It wasn't just a question of giving him, here in this case, it wasn't just a question of giving Moshe Rabbeinu, like, a reward, an honorable mention. But we just said here it's much more than that. It's not just a reward. But they became, and the nasu is bold. They became like his children. Even because he taught them what he heard mipi hagvura, and again, this word gvura is very significant. Because of that, it brought about a helada, a spiritual helada ruchnis, a spiritual birth. Okay, so something's not understood here. But in zelech enkel nafkim bein im yesh chiyuv made im hala bein in habdavar nasa lifnim mishuras hadin. כי מאחר שבפעל משה לימד מה שלמד מפי הגבורה לכל בני ישראל, ראויים היו כל בני ישראל שקיים בהם נעשו תולדות משה. So how is it if he, for whatever reason, if it's, what difference does it make if it's the Fnimishras or not? But since B'Peil Moshe Rabbeinu did teach what he learned to all of the Yidden, so then all of the Yidden should be, would deserve that it should be, she's kind to him, it should be like fulfilled in them. They should also have this quality of Nasu Toldos Moshe, that they became the descendants of Moshe, the Hasbar Bazeh. And the explanation is, Mashalimat Hater Pel Shini, the Halada, the Adam Halamed, Hareza Lo Mitzad Hamalamed. This idea that learning Torah brings about a change and a rebirth, a birth in the person who learns, this is not because of the one who's teaching. Ki im mitzad ha-Torah. This is because of Torah. Because Torah has within it this powerful element. The element, when we refer to the Eibishter as the Gevura, that this element of Gevura, of power and strength, is in Torah. Ulefichach, kasher adam le'emet Torah emzulasei be'efen hanam mashalamed mipi ha'gevura mitzad ha'chiyuv. So if somebody is learning Torah with somebody else in the way that we spoke before, that he learned mipi ha'gevura mitzad ha'chiyuv because he's obligated. As I hein emes shenefelos ha'ilada beruchnis b'talmid. Okay, it's true. There'll be some kind of a spiritual birth by the Talmud. But this rebirth is not attributed to the teacher. That's attributed to the Torah and to the Eibishter, the one who's commanding this. Similarly, we find that the Makis in Mitzrayim, the Eibishter Torah refers to them as Eisei Sav Shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Eibishter calls them my signs of the Eibishter. Lefi Shemesha Asan Al Pi Tziva Hashem Ubishlichusei. So Moshe, when he did the signs, they didn't become his. There's the Eibishter's signs that he did with the Eibishter's shlichus and the Eibishter's command. So the teacher gets a schar for fulfilling the commandment of the Eibishter, but it's not in his hands to bring about this Heilada. The dafke, this rebirth, the dafke kasher limude b'Torah im hazulas, hulo b'midas v'shuras hadin, ditziva Hashem v'shlichuseh. But when somebody teaching, learning Torah with somebody else is not in the category of din, of requirement, ditziva Hashem, that the Eibishter commanded him, v'shlichuseh, and this is his mission. Ella, what then is it? It's more than what is required. He's doing it from his own volition, his own idea. He wants to do this. That's when because when he's teaching, because the Eibishter said to do this, okay, he's doing the right thing. But that's not Lifnei Mishur Sadin. That's not going the extra mile. The extra mile is when he's doing it because it's his idea to do it, not because he has to. And that brings him. And then the rebirth, the Torah has within it the power of Gura, but then that rebirth is connected to the person who taught. Zayin. So we still have to clear up some things here. Okay, what we learned before, that this idea that they became his descendants, Aleph. Rak b'Mesha, Shalamed ba'atzmei mipei hagvura. This idea that somebody can become the child, become the telodis, become the descendants, it would appear that we're saying, from what we've said before, that it only applies Aleph, Rak b'Mesha. So you can only say this about Moshe Rabbeinu. Only Moshe Rabbeinu could do such a thing. Shalomad ba'atzmei mipei hagvura, because he himself learned mipei hagvura directly from the mouth of the Eibishter. So naturally, he had in the way that he learned with Bnei Aaron, because he had learned from the Eibishter. So his learning with them had the ability to bring about within them a spiritual birth. And another thing, so that's limited to Moshe, and it's here's another limitation. Only on the day of Matan Torah, the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe himself. You have this beginning of teaching them what he learned from the Eibishter with Bnei Aaron. Ve'ena muvan efa, eich nitan lilmed mikan shekol hamalamed disben chaveri Torah ma'alelav hakasuv ki'ilu yilade. You see what the question is over here? It seems to be very specific to that particular person in that particular time. And so Moshe could do this. And Moshe went because of what he experienced on the day of Matan Torah. So he was able to teach in such a way. So it's like a stretch. How do we get from that anybody that teaches somebody else, ki'ilu yilade, okay, it's not nasu teilades, but it's still a big deal. How do we learn this from here? The habir b'zeh. Ilu ninkei she'inyan nasa elu hatelades shelei yitachin b'mesha bilvad. Talaha maskana shebahe sofas hateva mesha, because of Meramez Hasater the Sipra Bilvad. If we would say that this whole thing, that they became his children, we can only say this about Moshe Rabbeinu, then somebody could come to the conclusion by adding the word Moshe. The Torah is telling us a story. Aleph, Pe'ul Chad Pa'amis, it's a one-off happening. Beis Shahesa Efshus Eitzel Moshe Rabbeinu. And this was only possible by Moshe Rabbeinu. And Aval B'Pshutei Shel Mikra, but in the literal meaning of the text, Mistaber Leimar, then it would seem that it makes sense to say, U'B'chol Mekim Sh'ak Efsha Yesh L'Farish Kan, that in every place where you can possibly explain it this way, Shatera Balash Mienu Hara V'Limud Ukmesha Unakatrashi became a Shapasuk Betera Matarasi Lulamid the Kayetipazet. So, but we have a problem because we know the Torah doesn't just give us fun facts. Torah doesn't say, this is really interesting. You know what happened with Moshe? You know what happened by Har Sinai? If the Torah is telling us, it means that there's something that it's trying to teach us over here. V'lachein mefarish kain Rashi gam b'nidun, and that's why Rashi explains it this way over here. She'afal pi she'inyan na'asa elu hatelades shalei, that even though this thing that they became his descendants, mamish yitachin rak etzel Moshe. To this extent, it's only by Moshe Rabbeinu. Shalamad mipi hagvura, and he learned it directly from the Eibishter's mouth in the powerful way. The dafka b'yem dibra Hashem es Moshe, and dafka on that day of Matan Torah. Mikol mokein mikan lamadnu, but nevertheless, from here we learn shagam kol hamalamed is ben chaveri Torah. So it's taka true. We don't have it to the extent that Moshe Rabbeinu had it, but we can apply to, when it says kol hamalamed, it means it's universally applicable, that anybody that teaches Torah to the a child of another, that the Torah considers it as if he fathered him. Me'acha shekol inyan b'Torah, she yilmad kol adam Yisrael in ben chaver. So anything in Torah that somebody, a Yid, will learn with ben chaveri, b'chol eis, at any time, ne'amar mipi hagvura, because anything that we teach in Torah, it's all mipi hagvura. It's all from the Eibishter, and in the powerful way. Hare afal pi she aleph shehamalamed le lamdei mipi hagvura. It's taka true that the one who's teaching didn't learn it directly from Hashem. And Beis ben Chavere lamdei mikfar, and it could be that the one that he's teaching, he's already learned something. Mekabel hamalamed schar sheichashiv lehadavar ki ilu yiladei. But nevertheless, the one who teaches receives a schar that it should be considered as if he gave birth to him. He fathered him. Aval yesh le'meshe b'diak l'shenei kol ha'lamed as ben chavere v'lei chavero. But the fact that the lashon is whoever teaches the son of his chaver and not his chaver, Ramaz Rashi. So Rashi's hinting at something here. She'inyan ma'ala of hakasav kilu yilade nifal be'ikar kasher hamaduber u'b'limad she'ena im adam bilti toli b'acherim ela im ben chaveri yeled ha'eches b'hascholas halimad. We're not talking about somebody who's independent. When he uses the word the son of his friend, so you're talking about a child who's still holding by the beginning of learning. So since the one who's teaching brings this beginning of learning Torah to the son of his friend, so there's something that happens here. There's something something new that falls into the category of a spiritual birth. That teaching, learning with somebody who's at the beginning stages, is not yet independent, is learning that there is something of this element of being a parent. And here we can learn, this is something in Pirkei Avos, I think it's in the parak that's coming up this week. So for here we can learn in a kind of a by the way, a roundabout way, an explanation of the greatness of this whole idea. If somebody says something, quoting your sources, if somebody says something in the name of the one who said it, to the point that how great is this? To quote with the source, that Chazal say that this thing brings Geula to the world. Why is it? Why does this bring Geula to the world? What's the big deal? Because when somebody reviews something in Torah, b'shem amrei, in the name of the one who said it, what's happening? Then he's emphasizing here the whole idea of the transmission, the tradition of transmission of Torah. Ashahu kibbutz haTorah mirabbai, because this person who's teaching, he received from his teacher. Umizem mistaber dar achar dar ad Moshe Rabbeinu. From this, it's clear that this is going generation back, generation, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe lamad mipi hagvura. Moshe heard directly from the Eibishter. Umikeich zeh shu mekashes ha'inyan b'Torah hayetzi mipiv el Moshe kefisha lamad zeis mipi hagvura, because the person who's teaching is linking back the Torah that he's saying all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, who learned it from the Eibishter. Harehu megale as keich mipi hagvura. He reveals the power of mipi hagvura, that it came from this element of the way the Eibishter revealed himself at Har Sinai, and the power This element that's in Torah that he is teaching, and this is what gives the power, that gives the strength, that gives the ability that when this person is teaching, because he's linking it up. I learned this from my teacher, and my teacher, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's what's able to bring about the this spiritual birth. You can say even more. That this is what brings geula to the whole world. Because what's geula? Geula hi inin shel gvura uleida k'mavur b'kama mekemis. The geula is the element of power and birth, as is brought in several places. The term, for example, of Chevle Mashiach, the birth pangs of Mashiach. The whole process is referred to as a birth, as we know. Even though that in the simple meaning of the text, we can't say on everybody who teaches the son of his friend Terah that this brings about a mamish a helada of birth. Emes, emeres al kaf, ki ma'al alav hakosef, ki ilu yulode, but because the Torah of truth says that the Torah considers it as if he had fathered him, muvan she'en zu hashva chitzenis grada le'inyan acher. So this is not some kind of just so happens to be an external kind of a connection that just to something else. But that in fact this does happen. This person did bring this about, even if it's just on a level of me'ain, of like ki'ilu. It's as if, but there's still that connection. Why? Why is it like birth? Ha'ena shel bittul terahu dvar Hashem baza hikaris tikaris. I don't think I pronounced that right, but don't tell anybody. That on the pasuk that if somebody neglects to learn Torah, that it's as if he is shaming the words of Hashem, and that person, Rahman al-Islam, is what does it mean? Cut off. The way that it says in Rahman al-Islam, something which is the opposite of life, heaven forbid. Why is it so? If somebody neglects to learn Torah, because the life of a yid is connected. It depends on Torah. Because this is our life. So when a yid is chas v'shalom separated from Torah, it's like fish that is separated from the ocean. V'al pi teres habal shem tov, shebechol rega hakadosh baruch hu mechadesh es kiyum v'chiyusei shel kol nivra, and the way the Baal Shem Tov teaches us that at every single moment that the Eibush there is mechadesh, he's renewing. Like renew isn't even really the word. It's like from new. It's like new. The existence of every created being. Nimsa. So if everything is constantly being recreated, nimsa. So then it comes out. Shekasher adam leme Torah v'shel me'atzmei ikaris tikaris. That when somebody learns Torah and pushes away, negates the whole cutting off business. It's not just a negative thing. That his connection to his life source should not be cut off. And more than that, when he's learning Torah, there's something positive over here. who he's causing that the Eibishter should make new his whole existence. And therefore, everyone who teaches the son of his friend Terah, then the pasuk considers it, the Torah considers it as if he fathered him. The kol pam shalemedim acher. Every time that he learns shalemedim acher, that he learns with somebody else, whoever it may be, that through this he's connecting this other person to the source of his life. It's as if he fathered him. He renewed and he brought about a birth. Because he caused that the Eibishter should renew at this moment this existence of his friend. I meant to say at the beginning of class that our learning is dedicated for a refuah shlema ukreva for Rabbi Moshe Yehuda ben Golda. Rabbi Kotlarski should have a complete and full miraculous recovery. B'seich kol chayli Yisrael, among all Yidden who need. Can we cut the recording? If anybody has any questions.